Y'all ever played Marco Polo? You played? Who's played? You know what Marco Polo is? Alright, for those of you who don't know what Marco Polo is, you ever played Blind Man's Bluff? It's Blind Man's Bluff in the water, or you play hide and seek. It's a form of hide and seek. But it's played in the water, and what happens is that whoever's going to be it closes their eyes and they count to 10. And everybody, disperses, right? Goes in different directions as quietly and kind of get away from the person. And then, once they counted to 10, they don't open their eyes. They start wandering around the water. And they start calling, Marco. And then the people who are hiding will say what? Polo. And so they'll try to find them only by their voice, right? So they'll be like, Marco and Polo. And so you're moving around. You can't open your eyes. And you're moving around trying to find these people until you can tag someone. Now, as fun as that sounds, if you're the guy calling Marco, it can be really frustrating, right? If you've ever played and you have your eyes closed because you can't see anything. You can only move in a direction based on a sound or a voice, and it makes you really attentive to the voice or to the sound, but it's really frustrating. It's really frustrating when you're trying to find something that you can't see, isn't it? How many of us sometimes in life feel like that? We're seeking to find something. Just can't find it. It gets a little frustrating, doesn't it? You know, in today's passage, it talks about finding God, about seeking God. It talks about you will seek me and you will find me when you seek me with your whole heart. In other words, it calls on us to seek God, to find God. But we need to do it wholeheartedly, right? With all our senses, with everything that we have. And sometimes I think that this letter was originally written, this passage was originally part of a letter that was written to people in exile by the prophet Jeremiah. And it was written to the leaders, the priests, the elders that had been taken prisoner by Nebuchadnezzar and been taken to Babylon, and they were in exile. And they probably had lost, what? Hope, right? They probably felt abandoned. Have you ever felt abandoned? Has life ever got you where you just kind of feel knocked down and beat up and you're like, where's God? Where's God in this? There's some sad times that hit us sometimes. There's these storms of life. I bet the people in Puerto Rico right now might be feeling that, don't you think? Where's God? Look, my whole island has been destroyed. My whole way of life, my whole culture, everything I know has been wiped out. And we encounter that in our own personal lives. And maybe sometimes on smaller scales and sometimes on bigger scales when it hits us health-wise or hits us personally, right? Or hits a family member personally. We feel like, where is God? Well, He's right there. He hasn't left. He promised that He would never leave us, that He would never abandon us, didn't He? So He's right there. And what today's passage is, even though it was written for folks a long time ago in a place of exile, I think it speaks to us as well. I think it offers us good news in that our God offers us too, what? A future filled with hope, right? That He has plans for us. And that we're to be hopeful. And we're to be joyful. Knowing that our God is in what? Control, right? That no matter what kind of storm comes into your life, no matter where you're at in life, no matter what you're doing on your journey, that God is in control. That's an important thing to remember. Because sometimes the days seem really bad, don't they? I mean, I've had bad days. I've had a lot of good days. But I've had some bad days too. We all do. I think it's a very commonplace for most people. But we need to remember that we're always to seek God. And I think that's the second part of this verse that we need to be mindful of, is it tells us to seek God, to seek His face, to seek to be in God's presence. Presence, Hebrew-wise, is translated to face, to seek His face. That's kind of odd, isn't it? Seek His face. Why do you think that is? What is it about a face that's so different? You remember it, right? Faces are important. If you look around this room, there's not, see, you only get to see my face, but I look around here, I see all your faces. And I look around, I tell you, none of them are the same. There's not a one, they all have the same features. You all have noses and ears and lips and eyebrows and cheekbones and chins and all those things that make up a face, but ain't none of them the same. There's none of you are put together the same. You're all different, right? And I mean, now I've only seen TV shows. I've never had a police officer ask me this, but if there's a crime, you see them on TV, they ask them what? Did you get to see their face? Right? To help identify, because everybody's different, right? If you saw somebody's face who committed a crime, you can identify them, right? That's why people put hoods over their head, right? Or put masks on when they do a thing, because you can identify them. So if you can get into the presence of God where you can see close enough, where you can see His face, then you can truly identify Him, right? You can truly relate to Him, right? To be in His presence. Did you know that the face can make 5,000 different expressions? I read that somewhere this week as I was prepping. 5,000 different. I mean, I know He can tell us, what, if we're mad. You're pretty good at reading faces, right? You can tell, if I asked you, if you looked at your daughters, you can tell when they're mad, can't you? Just by looking at their face. You can tell when something's bothering them, right? You can tell when they're happy or they're sad or anxious, just by looking at your face, right? When you know somebody and you look at their face, you can tell a lot about them, right? Sometimes people you don't know. I mean, my daughter, you know what she's thinking all the time. There's no hiding. Her facial expressions, she can't hide a thing. You know exactly what she's thinking. It's not always good, but it's always right there in front of you. You know what it is. But that's an important thing about faces, right? That we can kind of see into each other. Even without words being spoken, right? We can tell that there's something not quite right sometimes. Or there's something very right, and you're like, well, what's going on? And we use the word face a lot, right? What's the highest valued cars?
The A's.
Face cars, right? Well, except for the A's that have a face. But the face cards, and we use what else? We use face off is getting right in front of somebody, right? When two people face off, they're facing each other. We make time for, you don't want to lose face, right? When you want to get a face-to-face meeting with somebody, that's important, right? So face is a very common term that we use, but in today's scripture, I think it's what it's telling us is that we need to get to God's presence, right? We need to get up close and personal with God. We need to get into this thing where we're going to meet with God on a regular basis and meeting face to face. Because when you can meet somebody face to face, it's different than if I send you an email or a text, or even if I call you, right? When we can talk and I can see your expressions, it's different, isn't it? Or you can see mine, is it not? It's different than just words on a piece of paper. Would you agree with that? Yeah? If you've ever FaceTime, like I FaceTime my grandsons, it allows me to see what's going on in their life more than just if I was talking to them on the phone. You see, I can see their facial expression. I can see when they get excited when they talk about Halloween candy, or they talk about toys, or they talk about playing or going fishing, or any of those things, right? That's the kind of being in the presence of that today's scripture is talking about. That we need to spend time, more time. Some of us are already spending time. We need to spend more time getting into the presence of God. It's a very important part of our lives. Sometimes it's not a priority. We don't see it as a priority. It's something I can do if I can. If I'm not too busy, right? If I'm not too busy, I'll get around to praying. There's a quote somebody said, so if I can't make you, the devil can't make you bad, he'll make you busy, right? So he'll make you so busy you don't have time for God. But we need to remember the importance of being in conversation with God. In other words, we need to make sure that daily, sometimes depending on how your day is going, hourly, or even minute by minute, but we need to be spending time in conversation with our Creator, right? That we need to be focused on God instead of what's going on around us. We need to be in conversation, meaningful conversation. I don't mean that wish list conversation, but God, I'm here, it's me, it's Kenny, and I need you to pray. I need Billy and Ronnie and Jimmy and Helen and the people in Puerto Rico gotta go. You know, that's not a serious prayer, is it? Would you, if you had somebody in your life and that was your conversation with them, if they came to you and they said, here's my want list, I got to go, I know you got this. What kind of relationship, does that sound like one-side Sam to you? You know, where it's all one-sided, right? That you're not listening for a word back from them, you're not listening for, okay, there's no discussion, it's just, here it is, got to go. It doesn't sound like much of a relationship, does it? You see, God wants more of a relationship with you than being a one-sided Sam, where you come to Him with a wish list and leave it at His feet and say, here it is, it's yours. Bye. Not that that's not a good thing. But there's always, if it's a conversation, there's what? Two sides to it, right? Conversations have two sides. Preaching has one side. See, I can sit here and talk to you all day. That's just preaching. That's not a conversation. Right? It's different. It's different. So we need to have conversations with God. We need to dwell in His Word. We need to get to where we know His face. We know what makes Him up. We know what He likes and what He doesn't like. What He'd have us to do and not to do. How we should treat each other and not treat each other. And those things come from spending time in Scripture, but also spending time in prayer. Meaningful prayer. Prayer that's time that's been set aside for God. You know, you can set aside time for your favorite TV show. But are you setting aside time for God? You can set aside time to surf on Facebook. Or are you setting aside time for God? You can set aside time to go to a softball game. Or a soccer game. Or are you setting aside time for God? But see, because if you look at your priorities, where are your priorities? You need to make spending time with God, seeking His face, seeking to be in His presence, a priority in your life. Why is that? Because, indeed, as promised to us, storms will come up. There are storms every day. There's smaller storms in your life that come up each and every day. It doesn't have to be a hurricane. It can be a small thing. There's going to be decisions to be made. If you are in tune with God, how much more likely is it that you're going to make the right decision? Go down the right path, as opposed to making that decision on your own. Let me guess, you're a good guesser, right? I'm a good guesser, I'll just figure it out. That's a choice. Somebody asked why there's so many bad things in the world. Because it's a choice. God gives us free will. People make choices. People mess up a lot. People aren't good guessers. Just in case you haven't figured that out yet. I don't guess well for my own life. I make my best decisions when I'm prayerful about something. When somebody asks me to do something, let me pray about it. Are you just saying that to stall? No, I want to go home and I want to pray about it. I want to see what God tells me. Is this something that He has for me or not has for me? It may and it may not be. Not everything's for me. Not everything's for you. But are you open to some things being for you? That's a big question. We need to keep our eyes on God. You know, Peter, remember the story when Peter got out of the boat? He said Jesus was coming, he was walking across the water, and he said, is that you, God? Is that you? Call me to you. Tell me to come to you. He got out of the boat. He had the faith enough to get out of the boat, and he started walking towards it, right? He's walking on water. Now, that must have been a feeling, right? Can you imagine that? Can you imagine that, having the faith enough to get out of the boat and start walking on the water? And then he was filled with what? Fear. He took his eyes off Jesus. When he took his eyes off Jesus, he started to what? Sink. I think that says a lot, doesn't it? You know, we keep our eyes where they're supposed to be. We keep our eyes on God. We're focused on God and what He wants, and in being in His presence and fulfilling His will. things usually go pretty smooth. At least for me, they do. It's when I get off and I want to do things on my own, do things my way, that I get in trouble. And I start to sing. And of course, I'll call out just like Peter, Lord, save me. And he does. He pulls me back into the boat, gets me to the boat safely. But how much easier would it be for me if I would just consult God on a daily basis? Right? How much easier would it be for you if you would consult God on a daily basis on all your walks? What am I going to do today? What would you have me to do today? How would you have me minister to that person? How would you have me talk to that person? Lord, is there anybody out there I need to spread your word to? If there is, please make it known to me and give me the words and the strength to do it. And how often do we miss because we're not connected? That God's not a priority in our life. It doesn't happen. God being a priority doesn't happen by accident. It's just not. Things that you want to be passionate, that you're passionate about, don't happen by accident, do they? My nephew is passionate about hunting. He loves to hunt. I think if he could just hunt, he'd be happy as a lark, just hunting all the time. He just likes it. He loves it. And he spends time year-round. He doesn't just go out there and hunt during deer season. He spends time clearing out land and planting stuff and feeding the deer, and building the deer stands, sets up cameras to see what deers are coming through there, what size they are, how many there are. He checks cameras every day. So when deer season gets here and he goes out there, I'm not surprised when he comes back with a deer. Right? I'd be surprised if he didn't get a deer. Because he's passionate about it and he put a lot of time into it to make sure he was successful at it. My point isn't that you should go clear you a piece of land and build you a deer stand. My point is that you need to be passionate about your relationship with God like that. That we need to be daily seeking Him, finding His will for our life, being in prayer with Him, studying His scriptures, let them speak to us so we can make wise choices. We're real quick. That's a favorite scripture of a lot of people. Jeremiah 29:11, right? For I know the plans I have for you, right? We love that part, right? Plans to prosper you, right? We love that. Give me a future hope. And, that's good stuff. We want to hold on to that. But how many of us stop right there and don't go into the understanding that we need to be seeking God's face? We need to be seeking His presence. That we need to be spending time with God. It's not a one-way street. We can't be one-side Sams. It's not what God can do for us, it's what can we do for God. Does that make sense? That's the way most relationships are. One-sided relationships don't work well. Not for people, definitely not for humanity and His Creator. They're just not going to work well that way. God gave us free will. They talked about it a little bit in Sunday school this morning. Good Sunday school lesson, Billy, by the way. I know I was a little bit late, but what I caught was very good. A lot of preparation I can tell went into that. But they talked about free will. Jimmy brought it up about why bad things happen. And because we have that will, we have a will to choose what's good and what's bad. Or where we're going to do the right thing or the wrong thing. And how do we know the difference if we're not spending time with our Creator? How do we know the difference if we're not seeking to do God's will? I just think the problem with a lot of the world today is that we're not spending enough time seeking God, His will for our lives, and then carrying that will out on a daily basis. We need to know God's face. We need to be familiar. We need to be able to identify Him. Can you identify what God looks like? Do you know what God looks like? Have you ever thought about what God looks like? Can you imagine what His face looks like? Are His eyes, filled with warmth, or are they filled with anger? Are His ears tuned in? Are they tuned out? Does he hold his nose because he can't stand the stench? I mean, what is his face embarrassed because of the way we act? I mean, what do you think God looks like? Well, if you read the Bible, you know that God's love, right? What does love look like? Love's kind, doesn't envy, right? Does not boast, it's not proud, doesn't dishonor other people, it's not self-seeking. It's not easily angered, keeps no records of wrong. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices in the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. If God is love, then the face of God would reflect all those things, wouldn't it? Seems pretty simple. But do we know that? Have we spent time in God's presence? Do we seek to know Him? Or is it just something we do on Sundays for 2 hours? You see, the challenge is not to show up here on Sunday. The challenge is to take what you receive here on Sunday out into the world and to change people. To spread that love. As you draw closer to God, you learn more about God. And someone said they wish they had the faith of Abraham, this morning. And you know how you get the faith of Abraham? One step at a time. Small steps first, then bigger, and then bigger. And eventually you'll have that faith that will allow you to understand that all things are possible through God. That having a child late in life is not an impossibility with God. All things are possible with God. Right? Nothing is impossible for my God. But to know that, we got to draw nearer to God. We have to intentionally seek to draw nearer to God each and every day. To pull ourselves closer to Him, to look into His face. To be face to face. I love the song, and I don't know if you've heard it. It's Turn Your Eyes Upon Jesus. Have you ever heard that song? Have you ever heard that song? I love the part. It says, turn your eyes upon Jesus, look full into His wonderful face, and the things of earth will grow strangely dim in the light of His glory and grace. That ain't true. And that's where we need to be. You see, God does have a plan for you. And He does offer you a future filled with hope and good things. And I think He works in our favor in all situations. But He wants to spend some time with you. He wants to sit down face to face. He wants us to be spending time seeking to know Him. And when we do that with all our hearts, they will be filled with a peace that surpasses all understanding. They will be filled with hope and a joy. You see, because every time we come to God, whether it's here or at home, it's a time of worship. When you spend time in prayer, it's a time of worship. Let us always be found seeking God, spending time in worship, lifting up His name, seeking to know Him more, to draw closer to Him, to worship Him. And in doing so, receive the blessings that come with that come from walking with God. And all God's people said, Amen.